Shalom and welcome back, guys. So many people out there that teach the calendar and the book of Enoch really don't know what they are talking about or teaching. And sometimes we might hear somebody teach something and then we assume that it is correct. But sometimes there are really those who do know what they are talking about. And one of the things that I have to cover for the calendar is the stars mentioned in Enoch 82. And the reason I have to go over this is because this passage is incomplete, number one. And number two, it is being used to support for the Zadok calendar having 1 or 2 extra days with 0 leap weeks ever used for intercalation, and a shifting Sabbath that moves according to the equinox and equilux. They use this passage, and we're going to have to go over this passage because it's very clearly not going to tell us that. But you have to read it yourself. You have to read it because all they're going to do is quote one verse and interpret what that verse means. And Peter said that no scripture is of any private interpretation. If it disagrees with you, it disagrees with you, and it is what it is. Let's actually just go through the text and see what it says and make sense of it very quickly. So, starting at verse 9, this is the law of the stars, which set in their places at their times, at their set times, and in their months. These are the names of those who lead them, who keep watch so they enter at their times, who lead them in their places, in their orders, in their times, in their months, in their jurisdictions, and in their positions. Therefore, leaders who divide the 4 parts of the year enter first, and after them come the 12 leaders of the orders who divide the months, and the 360 heads of thousands who separate the days, and the 4 additional ones with them are the leaders who separate the 4 parts of the years. As for these heads of thousands between leader and leader, or between leader and the one led, one is added behind the position, and their leaders make a division. These are the names of the leaders who separate the 4 fixed parts of the year, the Tekufa days, for the stars: Milkael, Halemelech, Meliel, and Narel. The names of those whom they lead are Adnorel, Eusael, and Elomeel. These 3 follow the leaders of the orders, and one follows the 3 leaders of the orders who follow those leaders of the positions who separate the 4 parts of the year. At the beginning of the year, Melchiel rises first and rules, the one called the southern sun. All the days that fall within the period that he rules are 91 days. These are the signs of the days that are to be seen on the earth during the days of his rule: sweat, heat, and care. All the trees bear fruit, and leaves come out on all the trees. There is a harvest of wheat, roses, and all the flowers that bloom in the field, but the winter trees are dried up. These are the names of the leaders who are beneath them: Berkael, Jelebesel, and another head of 1,000 who is added has the name Hilu Yasef. His days of rule are completed. Verse 18. A second leader after him, or after them, is Halemelech, who is named the bright sun, and all the days of his light are 91 days. These are the signs of the days on the earth: heat, drought, trees bearing their fruit ripe, and yielding all their fruit ripe and ready. The sheep mate and become pregnant. People gather all the fruit of the earth and everything in the fields and the winepress. It happens during the days of his rule. These are the names, the orders, and the leaders of those heads of thousands: Gidiael, Keel, Heel. The name of one who is added to them is a head of thousands, is Asphael, and the days of his rule are completed. And that is the end of Enoch 82. So let's get back to it and discuss what we just read. This passage is being used today to support a 365th and 366th day out of time for the Zadok calendar, using the stars, the last two that were mentioned in the verses. And this simply is not true. So just so it is simple to see and explain here, I'm going to just read to you straight out of the book. Now, according to verse 11, there are four, the intercalary days that we know of, the tekufas, but there are 4 stars that are in charge of those areas. And on top of that, there's 360 stars. And then on top of that, there's the stars that are in charge of each month, the 12. So according to verse 12, there is a leader and the one being led. And then there's somebody added after them. Okay? Which goes into verse 13. These are the names of those. So Milkael serves in the spring, 91 days. Then it says in verse 14 that Idnarel and Eusael and Elemoel are under him, or under the 4 leaders. It's one of the two based off how this is being read. If we continue to verse 17, these are the names of the leaders who are beneath them. Who is the them that we're talking about? Well, if Milkael is first for the Tekufa, spring, these guys are under him. These are under them. It's very simple. What is being taught today is that these guys, or at least these last two, are at the end of the year. That verse 17 is talking about the end of the year. So after the 364th day, the 365th and 366th are these two guys, because their days are completed. For the day out of time, for the shifting Sabbath, the reason the Sabbath shifts is because they have these non-days that they're not going to count as part of the calendar. This doesn't support that whatsoever. Because look at verse 18. A second leader after him. But again, this can be interpreted according to G right here. Some texts read them. So after him or them, Helimelech goes next. And who is Helimelech? He's the second leader. He's the second one that was named up here. So everything prior to this guy, everything in verse 17, from verse 14 to 17, was under this guy. So the claim is that he serves, and he serves. And then these two guys fill in the 365th and 366th day. That is not what the text is saying at all. That is a misinterpretation completely. Helimelech is the second leader, just like Milkael was the first leader mentioned, and these 3 are under him. And these Berkael, Zelebesel, and Helusayev, they are under him, or under them, who are under him. And they're only under him for 91 days, because the next guy is going to take over for 91 days. And when he takes over, we have right here, Gidael, Ke'el, He'el, and Asfael. Oh, their days are completed. Well, the days of his rule are completed. And the his is not the last person in the sentence. The his is Helimelech, because he's in charge of this entire season, just like Milkael was. And then the chapter ends. We don't have Milael and Narel's order, because these 3 names right here, look at this one's B. The footnote for B says that some texts omit this name, which would make sense, because it should be 1, 2, 3, not 4 names, just like verse 17 was. Verse 17 had 1, 2, 3 names, not 4, before the rule was completed. And right here we have 4 before the rule is completed, which, again, may be pointing back to this name not being actually part of the text. So we can see here, though, regardless of that, the rule is completed. The formula was exactly the same. So these 3 or 4 are the same as these guys, but they're different, because these guys belong to the spring and those guys belong to the summer. These guys do not belong at the end of the year, because once they're done serving, Helimelech is next for the summer. So you can't finish the year. You can't finish this entire 3 verses that are talking about a 91-day period of time and then say these guys serve at the end of the winter, but now the next verse is talking about the first day of summer, the leader of the summer. That doesn't make any sense. These guys do not belong at the end of the year. They are not a witness for the 365th and 366th day as being legitimately part of the calendar and the way that it's calculated. These guys belong entirely to the spring, just like these guys belong entirely to the summer, and we don't have the text for Melael and Narel to show us how the fall and winter. So we don't have the name of these 3 for the fall, and we don't have the name of these 3 for the winter. And if there was a 365th and 366th intercalation day, or a record of these days being mentioned in the book of Enoch, the text is incomplete to show us Narel's 3 leaders that are under him, and the 3 leaders that are under those 3 leaders, right? Because Narel would be here, he would have 3 leaders, and then have 3 more under them. Just like he did, and just like he did, Elimelech did. He had his 3 or 4 guys here. So that is most likely what makes sense. What is being taught out there today is incomplete and incorrect teaching in this passage. So I know that might have been a bit shaky and everything, but sometimes that's what it takes to teach properly straight out of the book, so you can see it with me as I'm teaching you. And this is only part of the problem here, is interpreting text in a private interpretation and blasting it as truth, and teaching others to accept this because they have a different perspective. They have a different goal in the calendar, that is the shifting Sabbath, and they're going to read a passage to fit their interpretation of what they think should be scripture, right? Or what should be backed up by the scripture. They're going to interpret it so that it supports their belief. And we read it very clear and thorough. Verse 17 is not talking about the last 2 days of the year. It's not. It's giving you the last 3 leaders for the spring. And the summer side does the exact same formula, but with 4 different names, but obviously we saw in the text that one of those may not be legitimate. So with the 3 or 4 different names mentioned, who are the leaders that are under Elimelech, and then Elimelech's days are complete. His 91 days are complete. So fall and winter are not mentioned at all. Just their names as the leaders back in verse 13. To say or to teach otherwise is incorrect teaching. This is proof, number 1, that those teaching a 365th and 366th Zadok calendar that has non-days attached so that the Sabbath can shift, this does not support their claim whatsoever. And they're using it to support their claim. And there's other reasons why their claim is not supported that I believe, which I may go through extensively, but this is specifically one that had to be taught only about the book of Enoch and what that passage is truly saying. And hopefully you see it too. It's not just about my point of view. It's about what the text is saying and what it is not saying. And it is not saying anything about a 365th or 366th day of time for that to support that method of the calendar. Thank you guys for watching. Until next time, shalom.
I check, and you should fear God. Surround yourself with homies that'll help you hear God. Last time that I check, I don't do it for a check. I seek to please God, I don't need your respect. Last time that I check, Christ coming soon to trample on Satan. Boy, it ain't nothing new. Last time that I check, you should give your life to him. You ain't getting into heaven if you like to sin. I checked, and eternity is real. Saved at 15, fire burning in me still. Last time that I checked.